So tonight we're going to be looking at how we replenish our storehouses. We began by looking at the ways that we can clean our colon, heal the liver, produce alkaline blood, and then begin. We acknowledge that the brain is broken, and through this process of detoxification, we begin to heal our broken brain. As we begin to diligently obey the laws of nature, the 10 laws of health and life, then we are able to recognize, to understand, and manage our toxic emotions and replace them with positive emotions. Once the liver begins to clean and the amygdala and the limbic system begins to work on our emotions, then our relationships, we begin to build strong bonds and strong relationships. And when those spheres of our beings begin to heal and begin to return to a state of homeostasis, of equilibrium, of normalcy, we will manage all that has been given to us more efficiently. And when we do that, we are going to replenish our storehouses. For example, those of us who are emotional eaters, you get sad, you get depressed, you get mad, what do? You no longer jump in your car and go to the mall, you go on Amazon and you buy things that you don't need. You're easily irritated and you can hold a grudge. Like prior to my detox, I said this is 18 days on raw foods, I struggled with an unforgiving spirit. And I believe during this detox, I have gained the victory. Now, having that malady doesn't mean that I would never fall into that kind of toxicity. What it means is that I have to be vigilant and I have to be aware, so that if you said or did something that would cause me, that would put me in a state of emotional acidity, mentally I must maintain alkalinity so that I would be able to forgive. So tonight we're looking at our resources, our storehouses. Moreover, is required in stewardship that a man be found faithful. And stewardship means that we're able to manage the gifts that were given to us. Our time, whether you believe in God or not, belongs to God. Every moment that we are alive is His. And we are under the strictest and the most solemn obligation to utilize everything that we have to bring glory to Him. Of no talent that He has given to us would He require a more strict account than that of our time. The value of our time is beyond computation. If you want to know the value of time, look at a lover as they wait for their love interest to come. Look at the Olympian who won a silver instead of a gold medal. Look at someone who has lost a flight, and I've lost quite a few flights. The importance of time is crucial. This is very precious. Time is very precious, and we should not waste our time. Likewise, we can earn the money we spent, but we cannot get past the time we have lost. It's the only thing that we can never get back in our life. So time is more valuable than money. And so the means or what we do in order to maintain, to utilize our time is of crucial importance. So since time is one thing that we cannot buy, and that staying on top of time of all can be one of the most crucial distractions, and the noise that surround our daily lives will impact the way we manage time. It is easy to waste our time on meaningless things. In other words, we can become so consumed by time the other way around, and not the other way around. So we don't want to be so consumed by the negative things around us. I always say remorse and guilt will rob us of time. It will drain your body. The kind of tiredness and fatigue that we feel during this cleanse is nothing comparable to what we feel when we suffer remorse and guilt. Your time is valuable. You cannot hold time in your hands. You never know how much time you have, nor how much a loved one has left. So make time to share. Even those who are terminally ill, they don't have their time, their fate set in stone. Your time is valuable. You can hold time, you cannot. It takes time to make mistakes, and even more time to learn from them. The goal is, we're not perfect, and so we're going to make mistakes, even in managing our times, but we must learn from those mistakes that we make. You can find great teachers at Harvard, but time is the greatest teacher of all. How you spend your time affects you. And if you spend all your time watching TV, the only thing that would happen is that you would become amazing at watching television. Who you spend your time with also changes you. You are, to a great degree, who your friends are. So be mindful of your innermost circle, because the chain, the fountain cannot rise higher than its fountainhead. And the chain is only as strong as its weakest link. So be mindful who is in that network, because we are influenced by people around us. Treasure time, because it's a fleeting perception of the past, of the present, and the future. Our past, our present, and our future cannot escape time. And that's why it's important to clean the liver and not hold a grudge and not be bitter and not be unforgiving, because then you know, or fail to reach out to love your loved ones and they die, and you come before the casket and you're fainting and you're telling them sorry. Well, guess what? They can't hear. The love, the roses must be smelt when you're alive and you're up and you're walking. So take time to help others. Taking time to help others is very important. Last night we spoke about benevolence. And when you do kind deed, when you help others, you are actually boosting your immune system. So even the greatest rogue in your life, clean up the bowels, clean up the liver, clean up the blood, clean up the brain, forgive them. Don't let them live in your brain for free. You can get a much higher rental for your brain than holding a miserable soul in your mind. Of course, time management helps you throughout every walk of life. There is not one person who is successful at life did not learn to manage time efficiently. During our study on emotional health, knowing your emotions and managing your emotions, we learned that the person with a high IQ gets the scholarship to Harvard. He gets out of the school and he's hired for a top position. But the person who climbs the top of the ladder and does a more efficient job is the person with a high EQ, a high intelligence quotient. And we said that it is not hereditary, it's learned, and so therefore the emotional intelligence can be learned. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Last night, we admonished parents, be mindful what messages you are sending to your children. Those messages are imprinted and you're feeding your children highly acidic food. They're digging ditches in their brains. The amygdala recalls the statements like, I am ugly, I am no good, I will never amount to anything, I am just as horrible as my no good father, I am just as vulgar and common as my mom. And those memories linger. And then the limbic system, the amygdala, holds it, and the ditches begin to grow and become deeper and deeper and deeper in the pathways of the brain. But when we begin to know who we are and we begin to clean up our bodies and we look at ourselves and we know who we are, every positive thought, no, I am not destined for failure. No, I am not a loser. And yes, my father or my mother may not have had the greatest qualities, but I'm going to do my utmost to become a better person. So the definition of a thought is the act of thinking or the outcome of our mental activities. The second talent is our thoughts. We must take control not only of our time, but also of our thoughts. Think a thought, carry out an action that is conducive with the thought. You develop character traits, and the character trait determines your destiny. So if you think you're no good and you think you're a failure, guess what? You're going to be no good and you are going to be a failure. And what your mom says or your dad says or your first boyfriend says or your teacher says really and truly has very little to do with your determination to succeed or to fail. Now, if you buy into that narrative, then of course that will be your destiny. So be mindful of your thoughts. An example of a thought is an idea on how to solve a problem. Before I got involved in this lifestyle, I would become so convoluted in a problem. I would slow down. I would become almost mentally and emotionally crippled. No more. My experience traveling to New York with all of what was happening, I was as calm as a cucumber. Even the challenges that I had when I arrived, I was so cool and so calm. And I feel like I have really recreated new pathways in my brain. Now, if I go back to a clogged colon, a failing liver, acidic blood, I wouldn't be able to stand and testify that I am healing. So a thought is the past tense of the word think, which means to conceive this matter, this material in the mind. One of my younger sisters, Amanda, said that the thing she remembers most about my dad was the fact that he told her, it is not what someone thinks about you that makes you who you are. So thoughts are mental cognitions. There are ideas. There are opinions or beliefs about ourselves and the world around us. Now, the first people we learn to trust are our parents. Mothers especially. You must break the cycle of low self-worth, of nagging, of complaining about poor me, about why me. You're going to pass those traits on to your children. I see all of my flaws in my children. Some they have risen above, but I see the shortcomings. They include the perspective that we bring to any situation or experience that color our point of view. For example, for better, for worse, or neutral. Now, there comes a time when, as an adult, no matter what our parents said, no matter what they've done or failed to do or failed to say, we must take responsibility for our lives. As adults, remember, the broken brain can be healed. It becomes healed when the alkaline blood flows, when the liver is healed, and when the colon is unclogged. And so you can change those pathways in your brains. You can invest in emotional intelligence. And we all have our insecurities. You know, I'm very vain. And so whenever I gain weight and I have to stand and speak and I'm not fitting well in my clothes, I don't feel well. So, and that comes from being from a scrawny child to struggling with weight in my early teens and even in my older years. But again, as the brain heals, I am not subscribing to that kind of lifestyle anymore by God's grace. So however we find ourselves in situations will to a great degree be impacted by the thoughts we are thinking. Like I said, you sow a thought, you reap an action. You reap an action, you reap a character trait. You reap a character trait, you reap a destination. As a man thinketh, so is he. For those of you who believe in the Bible, we are told, commit thy works unto the Lord and thy thoughts shall be established. And if you don't believe in the Bible, commit yourself to your goals. Think that you can accomplish those goals. Make your goals measurable, make them attainable, evaluate them, restate them, and you will be a winner. A double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. Again, when the broken brain cannot be decisive, you know, today for the first time with that vamp up detox, I told those of you in the early segment, I began to feel tired, and I said, oh, maybe I need to eat, you know, and I was determined that I would not eat. I began to drink my coconut water, and I began to talk positivity, and I began to tell myself, I'm leading this group to success, and the fountain will only rise as its fountainhead. I cannot not do what I'm challenging everyone to do. And you know, here I am, loaded with energy. And be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of the mind. Now, you cannot be so heavenly minded, for those of you who believe in God, that you're no earthly good. The same God who tells us that we must be not conformed to this world, but to be transformed by renewing our minds, tells us we were made the head and not the tail. We were taken from the bottom and we were put on top. So I am saying to those of you, if you're going to walk around town and say you are blessed and highly favored, then act as though you are blessed and highly favored. Look people in their eyes. Square your shoulders, lift your chest and your breast, and be confident as a child of God. When I migrated to America 43 years ago, even coming from the healthcare system and realizing I needed a license to practice here, someone suggested that I tried out for the bank. So I went on an interview, and there was a Caucasian man who interviewed me. And he said to me, I am surprised that you're able to look me in the eye. And I said to him, really? I said, well, where I came from, the culture and the home that I was raised in, if you don't look someone in the eye when you're communicating with them, it is a sign of disrespect. And there is no reason why I should not look at you in your eyes. So walk the walk as you talk the talk. If you're blessed and highly favored, then act the part. So when we change our thoughts, we change our destiny. Remember, thought, action, character traits, destination. The first thing we must do, we must locate our misbeliefs. Stop telling ourselves the lies that were told to us. You're no good, you're ugly, you can never amount to anything, you're just like your no good mother or father. Learn to take away those misbeliefs. Remove lies. Argue against them. Sometimes it takes a lot. It takes a lot. I was, for example, told by a relative that I would be a street woman. And why would I be a street woman? Because I was very bold and I would shy, but it's almost an oxymoron. And when you said to me, don't do this, I needed to know why not. And so I challenge adults. And it's important that we allow our children voting rights. Many of us were raised at a time where children were seen and not heard. It is one of the greatest travesty we have done to the generations before us. that even amidst all the travesties today, many of us we remain silent. Our brains become numb to all this stuff that is happening around us. Replace misbeliefs with truths. Let's say, for example, someone got divorced. You know, the neuroscientists claim that divorce is worse than death. And so when you get divorced, people want to make you feel terrible, especially the women. And sometimes we are terrible, but don't walk around saying that you're a failure or that you're a loser and that nobody loves you and everybody is blaming you. And even if people say that to you, you tell yourself that you strove to do everything within your power to save this marriage, to make things work. I hadn't attended Mrs. Cornelius's lecture, so I didn't know the relationship between constipation and unforgiveness. So you begin to replace those misbeliefs with truth. All right, I tried. Marriage didn't work out for me. It's not the end of the world. I am going to continue to live my life the best way I can. So you have to stop telling yourself these misbeliefs, these lies that were programmed in your brain. And you know, sometimes your partners begin to say them to you. Oh, you're always angry. Oh, you're always critical. Oh, stop. You just pause and say, you know what? She's constipated. You know what? He is dehydrated. I am not hearing those lies. I'm not hearing those misbeliefs. Argue against them. Don't just tell yourself they're not true, because if you tell yourself they're not true and you're not arguing against them to remove those lies from your brain, you're just like the Christian who's walking around and saying, I am blessed and highly favored, and their shoulders are slumped over and they're unable to make eye contact, and they're always walking around with sadness and depression and complaining and bitter and unforgiveness. And then, of course, you replace those misbeliefs with truth. It's nonsense. I am lovable. I am not useless. I am worthy. I can do it. And guess what? As a man thinketh, so is he. We are not doomed to a cold, emotional machine-like existence. Beloved, we are throbbing with mental and emotional and physical and social and financial and spiritual energy, especially since you have made it through the 8th day of this colon cleanse. And if you haven't, it's not too late to start. I told you I'm committing to go with you at whatever stage you begin. Once we do not break this chain of detoxification, it does not need proof. All it needs is practice. So don't walk around with this cold, emotionless, machine-like existence. You prepare your mind, your body, your soul, your spirit, attract that kind of relationship in your life, and tell yourself you are throbbing with all of that energy. The mind may be fortified against temptation. Moral power is exceedingly weak when it comes in conflict with established habits. So the longer we practice something, the more it becomes second nature. So likewise, if you entertain negative thoughts, you're going to become negative. If you begin to transform your thoughts to positivity, guess what? You are going to be like the butterfly. You're going to be like a sunbeam. You're going to be like that ray of sunshine, and you are going to touch, and you are going to impact others around you. So impure thoughts have control of the imagination, and the temptation is almost always irresistible. As a man thinketh, so is he. And you know, we set ourselves up for failure, friends. You know, we begin to talk ourselves into thinking negatively, and we begin to talk ourselves in acting negatively. So we have those impure thoughts will control the imagination, and the temptation is almost irresistible. You know how many times we think, oh my God, I haven't heard from Mary in the last 3 weeks. Like one of my friends, I've been trying to get in touch with her to join. She struggled last night to get on. I happened to call her during lunch yesterday, and we spoke for over an hour, and she's here, and I thank God. Good to see you, Elizabeth. But we were sharing, you know, we were sharing about these habits, and just grateful how we have been changing and transforming, how our thoughts and our imagination and the temptations that we once faced and succumbed to is no longer a struggle. And it's a continuous journey. It's always going to be a struggle. If the mind were accustomed to contemplating on elevating subjects, the imagination trains to behold pure and holy things, it would be fortified against temptation. So, for example, in these days of detoxification, I am thinking about this ministry and all the things that I want to do. And I am just setting goals and putting up interventions and planning and thinking and strategizing. So let the mind dwell on pure things, on things that are not immoral. You're going to resist the temptation, and you will linger upon good thoughts, heavenly thoughts, pure thoughts, sacred thoughts, and you would not be attracted to the base, corrupt, and vile thoughts. You know, and when we speak about corrupt and vile thoughts, you're talking about your mind and who you think you are, and the negative emotions and the misbeliefs that you continue to repeat and entertain. So the time and the thoughts, all part of our treasury. So the temple, the body that we live in, the indulgence of base passions will lead very many to shut their eyes to the light, for the fear that they will see sin. They'll see wrong in their lives, which they're unwilling to forsake. All may see if they will. If we choose darkness rather than light, then our criminality will be nonetheless. So if we begin to think we are no good, we begin to believe it in our hearts. And as we begin to believe it, we demonstrate that in our lives. The choices we make, the things we do, the relationships we start. And I tell you, The beat goes on and on and on. Why do we not read and study and learn and become intelligent upon these things, which decidedly affect our physical, our intellectual, and our moral strength? Again, the body, the mind, and the spirituality, they go hand in hand. And when one is affected, the other one. When one goes bad, the other one follows suit. God has given us a habitation to care for and to preserve its best condition, to bring honor and to serve Him and humanity. In a relationship between male and female, in a relationship between a mother and a child, we are in service and we're bringing a character into being. The character of a marriage relationship, the character of a mother-child relationship, between siblings, between a boss and a co-worker. All of that is affected by our intellectual, our physical, and our moral strength. Your bodies are not your own. For the Bible-believing folks in the house tonight, Paul says, don't you know that your body is the temple of God and it's not your own because we were bought with a price? Therefore, bring glory in our minds, in our spirit, which belong to God. And even as a mother, your body belongs to your child, as it were. Spouses, your body belongs to each other. If you are not entertaining positive thought, managing your mind, taking care of your body, you cannot be of any use. Ask me, who have been near to death's door so many times, who's had 5 major surgeries, who was left to die in the intensive care unit for 16 days. We were bought with a precious price, and we must take care of these bodies. Paul tells us that our bodies are the temple of God and the Spirit of God dwells therein. What is that Spirit of God? It is an ability to love, to be kind, to be forgiving. It's not some pie in the sky theology. It is daily, practical, living experience, having the fruit of godliness, kindness, the ability to love and to forgive and to be patient and to have a balance in life. We're also told that if we defile the temple, which is holy, it will also be destroyed. You cannot put any old thing and every old thing in your body and think there is not going to be a penalty. Because we are what we eat, we are what we drink, we are everything that we do. And it is manifested in our bodies, in our minds, in our spirits, in our soul, in our relationships, and even in our bank books. The mind, the body, the soul, and the spirit makes up that temple of God, that place where positive emotions, positive thoughts, a healthy body, proper management of our means, not being so stingy and so greedy and so selfish that we would not want to help someone who was less fortunate or who was in need. As great stewards, we are admonished to not only take care, but to take diligent care. We cannot be in the pond and out the pond. It must be a consistent. Yes, we're going to fail. We're going to stumble. We're going to fall. But every time we fall, we must have that wherewithal to pick up ourselves, to dust ourselves off, and to keep on moving. After I came down with my first bout of cancer, and I thought I was doing everything with diligence in conformity with this text, that if we would hearken diligently to the voice of God and we would do that which is right in his sight, and we would listen to his commands, and we will keep the health laws, that he would put none of these diseases upon us, because he is the God who heals us. And 5 years later, I came down with cancer. I went back to the same sanitarium, and I began to wonder, and I began to argue, well, why am I sick again? Well, I found out that there was a cancer of my soul. I had bitterness and resentment and anger from heartbreaks and emotional pain. And there was no way my body could be rid of these tumors. And thank God that that experience has led me to study the relationship between our emotions and our well-being. Christ, for those of you who believe in him, has been a guide and a teacher of ancient Israel. And he taught them that health is the reward of obedience to these 10 physical laws of health. And tomorrow night, we're going to look at 10 doctors who will not charge you not one penny. And you begin to follow those doctors and you begin to receive their prescriptions, you would live a much, much healthier life. The great physician who healed the sick in Palestine has spoken to his people from the pillar of cloud, telling them that what they must do and what God would do for them. And when they fulfilled the condition, the promise was verified to them. So we cannot walk around doing any old thing with these bodies and expect to be mentally sound, emotionally stable, physically fit, socially strong, and financially sharp. All of our decisions that we make, all of the actions that we take from day to day will determine our success of life or not. The ball is in our court, as it were. We're the ones who decide what our destiny are. And always remember, folks grappling with me about these truths. And I remember my daughter standing up to speak and saying, this is not about anyone, including God, because the day we decide to have children, we have a God-given responsibility to take better care of ourselves. Remember, the fountain will only rise as high as the fountainhead. If you're sloppy, your children are more than likely going to be sloppy. If you're disorganized, they're going to be disorganized. I said to my children were good students, and we never held them accountable for doing things around the home. And I say to my children, when you have children, be sure that you teach them simple things: to make your bed, to put your dirty clothes in the hamper, to wash your dishes after you eat. You know, all those things are important. George Washington, it was said that he never had to look for anything. Never had to look for anything. He knew exactly where to go and find. He had everything noted in a ledger, all of his bills, all of his receipts, everything. And indeed, when the mind begins to heal, guess what happens? You are going to be organized in your life. Practice the habit of making your bed. Practice the habit of hanging up your clothes when you get home. Practice the habit, especially if you're a parent of young children. Children learn what they live. Don't tell your child not to watch TV and all you do is sit and watch TV. Don't tell your child to read. If they don't see you reading, chances are they're not going to become a reader. As a man thinketh, so is he. As a man does, so he becomes. Cogito ergo sum. As a man thinketh, so is he. As a man acts, so he becomes. The use of natural remedies, they require an amount of care and an effort that many are not willing to give. The nature's process of healing and upbuilding these bodies that we have abused is very gradual. And to those who are impatient, it seems very slow. For every year of abuse that we have done to our bodies, it takes about 7 years to restore. So think about that tonight. Don't spend too much time after 9 thinking about it, though, because you want to rest. You want to wake up tomorrow energized. So the surrender of these indulgences, it requires sacrifice. No one has made it to day number 8 without a sacrifice. Hang in there, my friends. It is going to be worth it. Today, someone said to me they are full of energy and they were so grateful. And I'm hearing about blood pressures that are lowered, blood sugars that are controlled, minds that are clear, decisions that have been made in relationship, how to speak and love, all of those things, you know, and it's a sacrifice, but it is yielding good fruit. In the end, it will be found that nature, untrammeled, does her work wisely and well. So hang in there. We're in a healing process. The rewards are great. Now, when we get to the end, I'm going to be challenging you not to return to the vomit or not to return to the mud, but the same grace and the same strength and the same power that kept us through these 10 days. My desire, my prayer, my hope is that it will carry us through for the rest of our life, because disease does not come without a cause. Everything we do, everything we drink, everything we eat, everything we look at, every thought we entertain is determining the outcome of our wellness. Those who persevere in the obedience to the laws of nature will reap the reward in the health of body and also the mind. And I would say in your relationship, in your financial management, everything is tied up. At various parts of this work, I began to see a greater picture and how one thing impacts on the next. Too little attention is generally given to the preservation of our health. It is far better to prevent disease than to know how to treat it when contracted. And the thing is, you know, we run to these physicians, and I've been a part of allopathic practice for 40-something years. I know its blessings. God has used it to save my life not once, but 5 times. It has its place, but 1 ounce of prevention is a lot better than a pound of cure. It is better to keep our bodies in a state of well-being and do our best not to become sick, because being sick is not a nice place to be in. We should all become acquainted with the most wonderful of all organisms, the human body. It is a big travesty not to teach our children or ourselves learn about the anatomy or the structure, the physiology or the function, and the pathophysiology or the deviation from equilibrium, from balance, from wellness. It's a travesty. We should know how our bodies are made, how they function, and what happens when we find ourselves in a state of sickness, of ailment, of breakdown of our life forces. And we should also know what we should do to bring it back into a state of homeostasis, a state of balance. We should understand the function of the various organs and the dependence of one upon another for the healthy action of all. My mom used to say, I told you I'm a country girl from South America. I was a gardener and won a couple of competitions too. And I remember my mom looking out of her room, which was off of the garden. And she would say, and we would see the hills, she would see the sunrise, the moon, the stars. And she would say, she doesn't know how anyone can disqualify the existence of a divine being. She said, nature gives such tremendous evidence. Well, I went on to learn that nothing gives evidence of a divine creator like the function, the structure, and the ability of a body to restore itself. It's amazing, it's phenomenal, especially when you go into the operating room and you see, for example, a kidney being removed, or someone who is born with 1 kidney and is an athlete and is living a healthy life, or you see them working on the gastro system, the digestive area, and bowels being taken out and being placed on a table and then being put back and aligned and fixed back into the abdominal cavity. It's amazing. It's amazing how a finger can come off, and if you get to the hospital within a certain time, they can actually reattach that limb that is lost. So we need to become acquainted. This is a wonderful organism. It is wonderfully and it is perfectly made. We need to study the influence of the mind upon the body and of the body upon the mind and the laws which govern both body and mind. Because if I were to say what is most important in terms of well-being, I would say the mind and the body, because the relationships, the emotions, the finances, the spiritual experience, they all follow suit. We need to teach people that these drugs do not cure disease. They have their places, but remember, there's a hardship on the body that is already sick. The liver and the kidneys must now remove the chemicals from those drugs. They have their place. They have their place. But it is not the answer. Remember, I said 1 ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. It is true that sometimes it affords present relief, and the patient appears to recover as a result of their use. This is because nature has sufficient vital force to expel the poison and to correct the condition that caused the disease. So for example, because we are trying to keep our body in a state of well-being, when you take that drug and you survive, it's because your liver and your kidneys are excreting those harsh chemicals. Health is recovered because of the drug. But in most cases, the drug changes not only the form and location of the disease. That's all it does, rather. It changes the form and the disease. Often the effects of the poison seems to be overcome for a time, but the result remains in the system and it can work great harm at a later time. So if you have to take some kind of harsh chemical, be sure that you are hydrating, exercising, sleeping well, eating well, getting sunshine, cultivating good thoughts, living and surviving creating a pleasant environment. Two people that really inspired me was Victor, oh boy, I can't remember his last name, and Ty Boom. They both survived Hitler's war, and Viktor Frankl and Corey and Ty Boom. Both of them survived the hardship, and in looking at their lives, what we found is that they were able to survive because they willed themselves to survive. So once you will yourself to be restored into health, even as we become sick and we're doing the things to recover, it will take time, but we can bring our bodies back. This is how powerful our bodies are, our cells, our tissue, our organs, and our systems within us. So don't lose hope. Our next area of stewardship is Thanksgiving. We looked at time, we looked at our thoughts, and we looked at our temple. Now we're going to look at Thanksgiving. Gratitude strengthens the immune system, and nothing tends more to promote the health of body and mind than a spirit of gratitude and praise. It is a positive duty to resist melancholy, discontent, and thoughts and feelings. It starts right here in the frontal lobe. It travels to the amygdala, which stores the memory. And, for example, when I lost my mom and my husband, they both had a good sense of humor. In most pictures that was taken of them, they were comical, they were laughing, and it became therapy for me. And every time I felt sad and I would look at a picture of Peter and I would see him smiling and all his beautiful pearly teeth out, and I would see my mom with her head back and her mouth open in laughter, and I would say to myself, but wait a minute, these people lived a life and I am alive and I must strive to live my life. So it will actually, that positive attitude, that spirit of gratitude and praise. A little after Peter died, a very close friend, we have so much in common, she lost her husband to COVID. And she said to me, she said, I am now among the list of those who could not be there upon close to my husband as he died. And I felt horrible, because of course I died with my husband was in my arms when he died. And that was a privilege, and it was an honor, and it was a desire of his. you know, and all of those things, we were able to care for him. My children were very involved. I had a lot of friends who were supportive. I had members of the ministry drop off baskets and boxes of fruits and vegetables. I had cards with, you know, love offerings. And the blessings just went on and on and on. And so every time I would feel melancholy, or every time my thoughts and feelings would drag me down, I had to consciously decide and count the blessing and the gratitude, and the praises just transformed. Remember during emotional health, I told you about my rabbit moment and the rabbit hole where I begin to overthink. The sky is falling, the sky is falling, and then I'm running from the falling sky and I end up in that rabbit hole. To get yourself out of that rabbit hole, it is not an easy thing. And so it's better that you don't get into the rabbit hole. And the way of doing that is through gratitude and a spirit of praise. Saturday night from 7 p.m. to 1 a.m., we're going to be looking at the effects, the relationship between praise and worship and gratitude and the immune system, especially during a pandemic. We need to know the relationship. It is a law that our thoughts and our feelings are strengthened as we give them utterance. So remember, as a man thinketh, so is he. Whatever thoughts you entertain in your mind will determine the actions, will determine the character traits, and will determine your destiny. They're all interconnected and interrelated. While words express thoughts, it is also true that thoughts follow words. I am so stupid. I am so dumb. I can't learn. I can't amount to anything. You tell yourself that. That is a self-fulfilling prophecy. If we would give more expression to our faith, to what we believe in, if we would rejoice more in the blessings that we know we have, the great mercy and the love of God, we should have more faith and greater joy. Cleaner colons, healthier livers, alkaline blood, healing brain, positive emotions, strong relationships, and no mismanagement of our financial resources. If you're an emotional eater, you're going to be an emotional spender. I find myself now, since my husband died, right? I could always fall back on him. I've been much better at managing my money. I'm still very benevolent, still very giving, but I know that I need to manage now because, you know, I have my children, but they have their lives. And until I need to be a responsibility for them, I'm striving to maintain my independence in every area of my life as much as possible. But I find myself now, even if I shop in a thrift store, I find myself saying, Lord, help me not to want anything in here. And, you know, and you go in the supermarket, and I love to see lots of fruits and vegetables, and I do indulge. And several years, Peter and I made a commitment that we would not hedge on nutrition because it is crucial for our health. Some of us will go, we will buy expensive clothes and shoes and purses and perfume. And then when it comes to buying food that will bring good health, we hawk and we cry and we, you know, you're bringing illness in your life by just being stingy and entertaining this this meager thought about your own well-being, your financial well-being. So let the fresh blessing of each day awaken you with a praise in your heart for the token of God's loving care in your life. When you open your eyes in the morning, thank God that He has kept you through the night. Thank Him for the peace that He has put in your heart. Morning, noon, and night, let gratitude as a sweet perfume ascend upwards, ascend to heaven if you believe in heaven. If you don't believe in heaven, let it ascend above the place in your frontal lobe and your amygdala and your limbic system. Let gratitude rise above you, and you will see a change in how your day goes by. Remember, one of your tasks on this 10 days detox is to start a thank you journal. And every day you should be finding 10 new reasons to be thankful for. Neuroscientists today have learned that there is something phenomenal about this spirit of gratitude. When someone asks you how you're feeling, don't think of something mournful to tell them in order to gain sympathy. People block you out. People avoid you if all you can do is complain and whine and negativity. Honestly, misery loves company. And I told my friend, I'm not going to call her out tonight, but I told a friend of mine, we must ask God to help us not to be miserable old women. She says, I'm not miserable. I said, really? She said, speak for yourself. Nobody, especially when you're older and you're not that productive, people can tolerate you when you can still whip up a meal or you can give them a good word of advice. But when you basically become non-productive, honestly, nobody wants to be around an old woman. That's why so many of our old people, unfortunately, are sitting in nursing homes. So our next resource, our talents. The time is now to establish good habits while we're on this detox. The character is formed to a great extent in early years. Mothers, you have a young child, begin to train that child. Begin to train the child now. You want your child to succeed. Order, discipline, regularity are all qualities. My children called me Hitler. You know, I was a very loving, I believe, parent, but I was also very strict about regularity. My husband, we had a good balance because he would let them run the gamut around him. But when I was around, it was a tight ship. And I told them, I said, to a great degree, your success in life depended on those kinds of qualities. So take time to establish good habits, especially when you are a young parent. The character is formed in the early years. The habits that are established as a child will have more influence than any natural endowment. I was very strict about TV watching, and you know, my children were encouraged to read. So in making men either giants or dwarfs in their intellect for the very best talents may, through wrong habits, become warped and enfeebled. So you could be born with a lot of talents. If you don't believe me, take a trip to the Bowery and you will find a lot of very very intelligent men and women sitting out there, high IQ, low EQ, because they did not establish habits of gratitude and positive things. So our natural, our influence, our habits will determine whether we become giants or dwarfs in our intellect, and our best talents through wrong habits can create a warped and an enfeebled lifestyle. The earlier life one contracts hurtful habits, the more harmful, the more firmly will they be held in, as it were, victims in slavery. Bad habits are not easy to overcome, right? I grew up in the midst of intemperance. My mom, God bless her heart, she showed her love by service. Her love language was service. And my mom would never make us eat what we didn't want. My mom could cook. We were really bratty, according to my children. And I concur. My mom could easily cook 2 or 3 dishes to appease the appetite of her household. And, you know, we were eating all day. We were snacking. And we ate pretty healthy because we were country folk. But some of those harmful habits that were learned, they have held us victims of slavery in terms of our intemperance, which in essence has lowered the moral standards and the spirituality in us. And now we are all, I would say, on a healing path, some a little more than others, but by God's grace, we're getting there. So I'm shouting out to parents tonight, don't help to cultivate these terrible habits, and then you have to regret it in your old age. It's because nothing is more painful when you see your child going down that wrong path that you strove. But you know what? Everyone has to determine his destiny. And as a woman of faith, I love my children unconditionally. I will continue to love and support them in whatever path they choose, and I will continue to intercede on their behalf that they would evolve and become the best human being that they can be and make a meaningful contribution to the world that they live in. So our last and final talent or resource would be our treasure. So our time, our thoughts, our temples, our thanksgiving, and I missed one. Time, thoughts, talent, temple, thanksgiving, and now our treasure. You know, God is a good paymaster, as they say, because he says, give and it shall be given unto you, good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over shall men give unto your bosom. For the same measure that you meet withal, it shall be measured to you again. I remember coming when I met my 4 sisters, Pauline, Elizabeth, Joy, Marlene. And I met those girls, and I always say their mom was one of the kindest human beings that I have ever met. She took me in her home and her family, and I was loved as if that woman had given birth to me. And she taught me that you don't have to have a lot to give love, right? Whatever she had, she shared. She was one of the greatest cooks that I've ever known. And she would make these fabulous dinners, and a barrage of young people would gather in her home, and we would eat and we would talk. And I remember with my first heartbreak, how consoling and therapeutic she was. And and together with my parents and women like Mrs. Brown, I have learned how to give, how to share. It is better to give than to receive. But this I say to you, sow sparingly, you will also reap sparingly. And if you sow bountifully, you are going to reap bountifully. We're not asked to give what we don't have. When I was in West Africa, there was a young girl who was HIV positive, AIDS. And I remember she was so tiny, she was young. And I hugged her and she cried. She said to me, I have not been hugged, not even by my mom, since I was diagnosed with AIDS. And I remember her running home and bringing back an outfit that I could never wear because she was so small. And, you know, I am a little more buxom than she was. But so kind, another experience that I had with the love of giving. I learned in West Africa that you can have a slice of bread and share, or you can have a loaf and not share. And you don't give because you have. You give because within your heart, you know how much has been given to you. I will never be a stingy person because just today, sharing my life experience with a young mother, I broke down into tears when I began to recall the blessings from health to finance to everything in my life. And so I can only be a cheerful giver. So we are told according to the purpose that is in our heart, we should give, not grudgingly, not out of necessity, because he gives, God loves a cheerful giver. We're told that we should honor God with our substance and with our first fruit of all our increase, and that the blessing of the Lord, it makes us rich, and he adds no sorrow with it. So money has great value because it can do great good. In the hands of those whom God created, it is food for the hungry, it is drink for the thirsty, and it's clothing for the naked. It is a defense for the opposed, the oppressed, and a means of help to the sick. So don't wait. Don't wait on someone until someone asks. Again, when the colon is clean and the liver is healthy and the blood is alkaline and the brain is healing, we are going to discern. We're going to be spiritually astute, and we are going to discern the needs, and our hearts are going to go after them, and we will share. So it has been given to us to help those who are hungry, those who are in need, those who are oppressed, and those who are sick, because you know, many of us are just one paycheck from poverty and homelessness and hunger, and you know, one more meal to a hospital bed. So these things were given to us to help others out of their distress. The world, the young people talk about karma. The Christian and those who believe in a divine power believe in reciprocal blessing. Money is no more value than the sand, only as it is put to use in providing for the necessity of life and for blessing others and advancing the cause of Christ. Hoarding wealth is merely useless. It is actually a curse upon mankind. And sometimes the more you have is the stingier you become. Do you feel like your money is the master and you are the servant? Money is a terrible master, but an excellent servant. Your credit success depends entirely on whether you are the master or the servant. In these United States, there is something called the credit score and a FICA score, all of which determine your credibility, your ability to be given loans. And most of us have messed up our credits, especially those of us who are immigrants, where there was no such thing in our time. You didn't buy anything on credit. If you did a higher purchase, you paid monthly, you put a down payment, but there was no such thing as a credit score. There was no such thing as a credit card. And we migrated here and we got a credit card. They gave credit card to 18-year-olds and they ran to Miami and partied hearty and had a good time. And before you know it, the country is in a financial crisis, right? In this Western world, your credit score will tell you who the real master is. If your score is high, you're a master. Well, guess what? As I begin to clean up, I am walking to become a master of my financial destiny. And my focus is so that I can realize some of my dreams and I can help others to realize their dreams. If your score is low, your money is the master and you are the slave. We work for our money. Our money doesn't work for us. And we cannot succeed financially if you are a servant to your money. So if that's something you want, amazing credit, then stop waiting for it and start doing something about it. If you are still spending your money on buying expensive clothes and sneakers, and don't get me wrong, I was once younger like you, but remember, your clothes do not make you, you make your clothing. And I know you still want to look fly, but if you have dreams of accomplishing things that requires money, then you have to become the master of your money and not a servant of your money. If that's something you want, amazing credit, stop wishing for it and start doing something for it, because none of us, as far as I know, are so rich where we're not impacted by the kind of credibility we have in terms of our credit and our finances. Let me make this clear. Unless you start doing something about it, your money will always be your master. It will not give up control unless you act, unless you break those chains, unless you say, I am going to be the master of my financial destiny. I don't work for you dollars and cents, you work for me. God entrusts us with means. He gives us power to get wealth. He waters the earth with the dew of heaven and with the showers of refreshing rain. He gives sunlight. He warms the earth. He awakens life in things of nature, causing them to flourish and bear fruit. And as he asks for a return of his own. Remember, my friends, a clenched fist cannot open to receive the blessings of a renewed mind, a rejuvenated body, the replacement of toxic emotion, rebuilt stronger relationships, the replenishment of storehouses, and the restoration of the imago Dei, the image of our Creator within us. Beloved, I wish above all else that your mind would be renewed, your body would be rejuvenated, you would replace your toxic emotions in your soul with positive emotions, that your relationships would be rebuilt, that your body would be rejuvenated, and your spirit will be refurbished in the image and the likeness that was lost.